if you're ready to be blinded by science, here's what we're going to do for the next couple of minutes. Talk about how protein, first of all, fits into the process of getting fitter. You know a bit about that. Hopefully you're going to learn a bit more about it. We're going to talk about the latest science and recommendations for protein, and specifically around endurance and endurance athletes. And then specifically around how that led to the formulation of our first product launch. All right, so now let's look at this twin slide. This image I've seen so many times in scientific presentations over the years. So these are twins, and one of them pursued endurance running and the other chose bodybuilding. And the point is, and you see the title, You Are What You Do. Of course, you've heard you are what you eat. You are what you do as well. And if you're sitting on the couch, that's one version of you. And here's probably similar genetic potential that has been adapted by what you're doing. And so, our bodies are incredible in that they react to physical activity by getting better at the physical activity that you do. So if you're a marathon runner, endurance athlete, you start training for endurance activities, and the way your body is going to react is by increasing the delivery system for nutrients and oxygen with capillaries, increasing the energy producing part of the muscle cells, mitochondria, and there'll be a shift from more fast twitch to more slow twitch muscles, because that's what will benefit endurance activity. And if you're a weightlifter, quite the opposite, more contractile proteins and more type 2 muscle fibers. So, the point is that, the body has the ability to adapt to what you do. And so that already, you guys train, but this is kind of laying the foundation for where protein fits in. So on this slide, we talk about that the way you get fitter, say over the course of months and years, is through small changes that happen each time you train. So what happens is that when I talk about capillaries and mitochondria and contractile proteins, those are proteins, and they are being made by building blocks, which are amino acids. The amino acids are the building blocks that there's 20 total amino acids that you need to build all the different hundreds of thousands of proteins that we have in our body. 12 of them are non-essential. We can make them from other building blocks that make up those amino acids. And then there are the essential amino acids, and there are 8 of them. And the amazing thing is that whether you're building contractile proteins to be a strength athlete, or you're building mitochondria to be an endurance athlete, it is the exact same building blocks. It's the same amino acids. And so that amino acid pool is available. And then when the signal comes in, engine room, make more mitochondria, those amino acids are put together in a way to make you a better endurance athlete. So of the amino acids, there are 3 that are called branch chain amino acids. Maybe you've heard of those, BCAAs, and they are isoleucine, leucine, and valine. Leucine is, so those 3 are part of the essential amino acids, and research over the last 10 plus years has led to the understanding that leucine is really the key amino acid in terms of the muscle proteins that are being made. And so leucine, you can think of has a dual role. It is an essential amino acid, so it is a building block, but it is also the trigger for actually making muscle proteins. And so when the signal goes out, make some more proteins, there has to be enough leucine around for those proteins to start being made. And so this is called the leucine trigger. And so if you are missing leucine and you have the other amino acids, you cannot make the same kind of amino acids in the same way. And so, one of the analogies that we're talking about for leucine is that leucine is like a player coach. it's acting as a player, as an essential amino acid, but it's also kind of telling the other amino acids, okay, get in line. It's time to make some muscle proteins. I told you I was going to blind you with science, right? And so these changes happen every single time that you are exercising. So you exercise, and right after exercise, the signal is out, and you are making new muscle proteins. And that fitness, the chronic fitness over months, is the sum of these acute changes. So if you look on the left side, these bars are actual myofibrillar proteins. Those are muscle proteins that are being made after exercise. Every single exercise session, over time, that leads to changes in muscle fibers and muscle cells. And so here again, you see on the top muscle hypertrophy, which is growth, and on the bottom. So depending on the type of exercise, you're getting changes in the muscle cells that lead to overall fitness. Now, there are changes in the body that and changes in proteins that are made that are not just about muscle, that obviously go into being a better athlete. But this is one that is very fairly easily measured after exercise. And just that second bar, that where it's like a blue shading, is actually the impact of protein consumed after exercise. So exercise by itself will have an effect on muscle protein synthesis. Take in protein after exercise, and you're going to have more. And we're going to get into that a bit more in the next slide. Okay, so here is a really fairly recent study, but is already becoming a landmark study. So in this study, they exercised endurance athletes on a tough endurance protocol, and then they measured muscle protein synthesis post-exercise over the course of a few hours. The black bar was no protein, and then you can see 15, 30, and 45 grams of protein right afterwards. And so there was really a dose response. And what was amazing is that there's 30 has become kind of the standard recommendation post-endurance exercise after this study. 45 did a little bit more, but not a ton more. And the incredible thing is that this recommendation for endurance athletes to have 30 grams of protein after exercise is greater than the amount of protein that's recommended for strength athletes after exercise. And that was talked about a lot in the write-up of this study. So kind of counterintuitive. If you talk to people 20 years ago, this would have just been coming out of left field, but it's becoming more and more well-known. One of the other interesting things is that, and maybe you guys know this, you're burning carbs and fat as fuel when you're exercising. You know that you're also burning a little bit of protein. But it is not nearly as much as carbs and fat, but it is a fuel. And so you are breaking down muscle proteins typically as fuel and other parts and from other parts of the body. And the estimate is that you burn about 10 grams of protein per hour. So that's not saying that's what you should be consuming during exercise, but it's one of the things that is important to consider when you're thinking about what you're going to do nutritionally. And so we're going to get into some of the recommendations that come off of some of this research. Next. And here are the latest daily recommendations, and we can get into a few slides of just practical tips that are then going to lead us to why we formulated the ADRA bars the way we did. So the current recommendations for sedentary Americans, as you may have seen on the back of any food product label, is 0.8 grams per kilogram, which is rounded to 50 grams. So if you see a product that says that it has 10 grams of protein, it'll say it's got 20% of the daily value. That's because the recommendation kind of in general is 50 grams per day. The recommendation for strength athletes goes up to double that, 1.6 grams per kilogram per day. And based on the most recent findings, endurance athletes the recommendation is actually higher at 1.8 grams per kilogram per day. So there's a little chart there to help you to see how this translates for different weights. This is, this is more than most people are probably getting. And so this is really important. And there's a couple ways that it's measured and where these recommendations come from. There's looking at the effects of things like muscle protein synthesis, like we just saw in that study of the 15, 30, and 45 grams. There's also total nitrogen balance. So there's a measurement of how much nitrogen is being lost and then either or used to build new muscle versus how much is coming in. And those are the kinds of studies that are used to figure out these recommendations. So I'm assuming this might be fairly new information for some of you. So we do have both a write-up with references that happy to share with you guys, but also answer any questions that you guys have. But we'll go on to the next practical tip. So that one was about recommended daily intake. This one is about protein timing. This was another landmark study looking at different ways of taking in protein after exercise and basically the first 12 hours after an exercise session. So 3 different ways: 40 grams every 6 hours, 20 grams every 3 hours, or 10, basically nibbling 10 grams every hour and a half. And if you hit the little build slide, here are the results. It turned out that about 20 grams every 3 hours was the best way to maximize protein synthesis in the bunch of hours after exercise. And this leads to a very practical recommendation of basically getting 20 grams of protein at your 3 meals, and then getting 1 or 2 20-gram snacks between meals, and that as being the best way to get your protein throughout the day. Remember, 30 grams is probably the right amount right after the exercise session, and so you can kind of work that in as either a snack or as if you're having a meal, then you want to have that 30 grams, and then build in about every 3 hours thereafter. Yep. Okay, so that's timing. Quality. So not all proteins are created equal. And by the way, on that last slide, one other point to mention is that there was a study after that understanding of the best way to do timing, how many athletes are eating in that way, and not that many were. So there is an opportunity to improve, using this science to figure out how to do protein timing to maximize recovery and adaptation, like we were talking about. Okay, so protein quality, and we're looking at comparing whey protein versus collagen protein. Whey's in the white bars, and in the shaded bars is collagen. Collagen is missing some essential amino acids and really does not have as great of an effect on protein synthesis after exercise. So just something to consider in terms of protein quality. Collagen is not typically thought of as a great quality protein and there are differing qualities for different protein sources. And we're going to give you a quick summary on this next slide. And small writing, but so this is the leucine levels, because leucine is that key amino acid for stimulating and triggering muscle protein synthesis. So some of the better sources of leucine, and obviously whey protein is one has been thought of as the gold standard for helping to recover and build muscle after exercise. Milk protein and casein, 2 other types of dairy protein, similar, a little bit less than whey protein. And then you can see some non-animal sources are considerably lower in leucine, and so they don't typically have the same ability to stimulate protein synthesis when provided at the same level. If you see, these are all 20-gram servings of the isolated protein. And then on the next one, we're going to just add in something new. So here are the leucine levels of the two different types of protein address bars that we're about to launch. And so you can see, if you look down at the bottom, 17 grams of protein is what is in these, both of these bars, 17 or 18. And then we add 1.5 grams of leucine in an enriched protein that is either the highest bar is the 2 dairy bars, and then the next bar chart is, or bar in the chart is our vegan. So even our vegan bars that are 17 grams of protein have higher leucine contents than 20 grams of whey protein. So that is a really great way for you to get the protein recommendations and the leucine recommendations to stimulate protein synthesis without having to have a heap of protein. And there are a couple of studies that we worked on with Stu Phillips in Canada, looking at this exact delivery of protein and leucine and showing effects on protein synthesis. And these are published studies. Next.
Just one comment there. So within the asset library that you guys are going to get access to, we actually aggregate a lot of the research in a lot of these studies, including the research from Dr. Phillips. And one of the talking points, and Eric, if you're going to get to it in a second, I apologize for jumping the gun, but one of the key data points around these bars is that with the added leucine content, the study that Dr. Phillips worked on actually did muscle biopsies to measure the amount of muscle protein synthesis that they suspected was occurring. And what they saw was essentially the 17 grams with the added leucine performed and generated the same levels as up to 30 grams of a whey protein serving. So you're getting a 30-gram value of muscle development with much lower quantity needed. So it allows you to save and really optimize your macros and focus on either carbohydrate or fat needs without needing to overdo it on other areas.
That's perfect, Matt. Yeah. So if you look at the y-axis, the up and down axis, you'll see the vegan Adger bar is 2.5-ish grams of leucine. That's about 25 grams equivalent of whey. And that's with the vegan delivery. And if you take a look at the leucine levels of the other vegan proteins, much, much lower. And then the dairy whey-based Adger bars are up at 3. So these are great ways to stimulate protein synthesis. And like we talked about, in great tasting, but you'll have to try them for yourself to see if they are great tasting.